A parliament building, the most powerful symbol of government in Nepal, was burning. Smoke poured into the sky while crowds of young protesters filled the streets of Kathmandu. They weren't afraid. They weren't backing down. And what shocked me most was that the police, the very people trained to protect those buildings, stepped back and did nothing. For a moment, it felt like the whole system had collapsed, and power was no longer in the hands of the politicians, but in the hands of the people. At first, I thought maybe this was fake news, but the reports kept coming in. It was true. Nepal, a small but beautiful country in South Asia known for Mount Everest and its temples, was suddenly the center of a political storm. And it wasn't just any storm. It was a rebellion led by Generation Z, young people who had finally said enough is enough. The spark came when Nepal's government banned 26 social media platforms, including Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and X. The official reason was to fight misinformation, but to many, it felt like censorship. It felt like silencing. For a nation where young people already carried the heavy burden of corruption, poverty, and unemployment, this was the final straw. Protests erupted in Kathmandu. Students poured into the streets. Workers joined them. Their chants echoed through the city, demanding justice, demanding transparency, demanding an end to the system that had failed them for decades. And then, the violence began. The police opened fire on protesters. People died. Instead of scaring the crowds away, the killings ignited something deeper. Anger turned into defiance. Thousands stormed the parliament building, and in the chaos, it was set ablaze. Images of flames tearing through that seat of power spread across the world. For the first time in decades, Nepal's government was forced to confront the reality that it had lost control. The prime minister resigned. An interim government was set up under a man with a reputation for integrity. And for a brief moment, ordinary Nepalis felt hope. But what does this have to do with the Philippines? More than most people think. When I saw those flames, I couldn't help but imagine the Philippines. I couldn't help but wonder, are we heading toward the same fate? Are we, like Nepal, so weighed down by corruption and disillusionment that one day our own people will decide enough is enough? The parallels are chilling. Nepal is a country blessed with breathtaking natural resources. It has the Himalayas, rivers, fertile lands, and a cultural heritage that attracts millions of tourists every year. Billions of dollars in foreign aid and development loans have poured into Nepal over the decades. And yet, Nepal remains one of Asia's poorest nations. Why? Because corruption swallowed everything. Funds meant for roads and schools were stolen, budgets for hospitals and housing vanished. Politicians enriched themselves while ordinary people struggled. The Philippines, too, is a country blessed with riches. We have fertile lands, minerals, fisheries, a strategic location in Asia, and one of the youngest populations in the world. We have call centers, overseas workers, tourism, and endless potential. And yet, ask ordinary Filipinos what life is like, and you'll hear the same answers. Corruption, bureaucracy, poverty, and hopelessness. In Nepal, the economy is heavily dependent on remittances. Millions of Nepalis work abroad, sending money back home because they cannot survive in their own country. In the Philippines, we see the same pattern. We send our nurses, engineers, seafarers, and domestic helpers overseas. Every year, billions of dollars flow into the country through remittances, making up around 10% of the national economy. Without these workers, both Nepal and the Philippines would collapse. But here's the danger. When a country depends too much on remittances, it stops building its own industries. It stops creating jobs at home. It becomes dependent on the sacrifices of its citizens working in foreign lands, far from their families. That dependency is a trap, and both Nepal and the Philippines are stuck in it. When I look at the Philippines today, I see warning signs. Public funds lost to ghost projects, overpriced contracts for infrastructure, investigations that take years but rarely put the guilty in jail, families who dominate politics, passing power from one generation to the next as if the nation were their personal inheritance. It is the same story told in Nepal, just with different faces and different accents. And just like in Nepal, the younger generation in the Philippines is growing restless. Gen Z Filipinos are not blind. They see how hard their parents work just to keep food on the table. They see how education doesn't guarantee jobs anymore. They see how politicians talk about patriotism while stashing money abroad. They see how their future is being stolen. Nepal's Gen Z reached a breaking point when their voices were silenced online. For the Philippines, the breaking point could come in many forms. It could be another massive corruption scandal that drains billions while families starve. It could be the silencing of journalists who dare to speak truth. It could be a violent crackdown on student protests. Or maybe, like Nepal, it will be something as simple as a ban on social media platforms, the one place where young people feel they still have a voice. Imagine what would happen if the same thing happened here. Imagine if TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram were suddenly banned in the Philippines. Imagine if the government said it was for our safety, but we all knew it was about control. Would Filipinos accept it quietly? Or would the streets fill with anger the way Kathmandu did? The tragedy of Nepal is that it didn't have to come to this. Decades of corruption piled up until the people broke. The government ignored the warning signs, thinking the people would stay silent forever. And then, one night, Parliament burned. The Philippines has a choice right now. We can learn from Nepal's collapse, or we can wait until the fire comes for us too. Some say the Philippines is too different, that we are too patient, too forgiving, too focused on survival to rise up in the same way. But history shows otherwise. From the People Power Revolution in 1986 to countless student protests, Filipinos have always found their voices when pushed too far. The question is not whether we will reach a breaking point. The question is when. Corruption doesn't just steal money, it steals opportunities. It steals education from children who could have been doctors. It steals medicine from patients who could have lived. It steals dignity from workers who deserve fair wages. And slowly, it steals hope until people no longer believe in their government. That is exactly what happened in Nepal, and it is exactly what could happen here. But it doesn't have to. The Philippines has choices: transparency in government spending, real accountability for corrupt leaders, empowering independent journalists, using technology to track public projects so no peso can vanish without explanation, and most importantly, listening to the youth instead of silencing them. Because if there's one lesson from Nepal, it's this: you cannot silence a generation. They will find their voice, and when they do, they will not whisper. They will roar. So the Philippines stands at a crossroads. One path leads to reform, accountability, and growth. The other path leads to fire, collapse, and despair. The flames in Kathmandu are not just a story from another country. They are a warning. If the Philippines ignores it, then one day we may wake up to see our own institutions burning, our own streets filled with anger, our own police stepping back as the old system crumbles. But if we learn, if we act, if we demand better, then maybe the Philippines will not be the next Nepal. Maybe we will be the story of a nation that faced corruption and refused to let it destroy us. The choice is ours. Do we wait for fire, or do we build a future before it's too late?